Hello, everybody. I'd like to go over more about our behavioral patterns that we've learned during our life. I talked about last time about how, when learning to drive a car, um, when we first were very aware of it, of changing the gears, of putting the brakes on, putting the blinker on. But after we get used to it and we know how to drive, we put that on autopilot. So we'll be driving someplace and all of a sudden we're there and it'll be like 20 minutes and we're like, where did all the time go? Well, it's because we were on autopilot. And, same thing when we're a child. We're limited by the surroundings that we live in. Where our parents used to take care of us, we were confined to the house and what we had in our house. And, this is how we learn to cope with our lives with what we had in our life when we first started growing up, the confinement, whatever toys we had and everything. And so when we got used to that, we put that on autopilot. And we learned ways that used to work, things that we used to do that used to work but don't work anymore for us when we become an adult. A lot of cultures will have a ceremony when you become an adult, and you're told about how the things that you learned when you were young are no longer useful for you anymore, and it's time to drop those ways and move forward and do things that patterns, and do things in your life that are constructive and move you towards your end result and your goal. Um, so these are years of patterning that we may have learned because, we may not have had that, change into adulthood where we have a ceremony that, turns us into an adult man or an adult woman. So we've learned all these patterns and we tend to hang on to them just because we've survived them before, and because we survived them, we keep on doing the same thing. Um, and we don't even realize that we're doing it. Like, say, for instance, I used to argue with my wife all the time. And, these are behavioral patterns that, we all learn and we subconsciously do. And then at certain points, we could become aware of it and realize this is where we realize we want to change or do something about these patterns. I mean, it could be, um, wanting to, change the amount of food that you eat, or wishing that you could get more exercise. I mean, these are all patterns that we do, like overeating or not getting enough exercise, that we tend to get into later part of life that we have a hard time changing, and it was really hard for me to stop arguing with my wife all the time, for instance, but I came to the point where I would catch myself when I started arguing, and I made the choice that I wanted to live with my power and have my power and control back instead of arguing. And this took over 6 months to 3/4 of a year, maybe even a year of catching myself. Every time I realized I was going to start arguing, and making the choice to live with my power, have my power and control back, and not argue. And I mean, this just took catching myself over and over and over again, and it may take 6 months to a year before you start automatically not arguing or doing, the behavioral pattern that you've learned in your life that you want to change. Changing your behavior and things that you do in your life and patterns that you learned, that you've been conditioned over years and years, that you don't even realize you're doing. It doesn't happen overnight. you know but years of patterning can be changed just by reprogramming or reteaching yourself with your behaviors you wish to change. For me, it was arguing with my wife. And this works for all behaviors you want to change in your life. It could be wanting to eat healthy or wishing you exercised more properly, or even if you feel like you're having a midlife crisis. Okay, here we go. Another little chat that I wanted to go into depth about. I'll think of some more things and we can, you know, go over some more tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Have a good day.